There we go. We're going live, baby. Hi. We're like 5 minutes late, but who really cares? Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm grateful. I really am. What I want to talk to you about today is this coming Friday, Juneteenth, that DEI holiday. Understand, the big news is that a lot of governments, city, county, state, federal, corporate banks, are pulling funding from Juneteenth. And it's about time that this DEI holiday was put to bed. Juneteenth is also known as Biden's Folly. Yeah, that's because this holiday has never been anything more than Jill Biden's DEI attempt to buy the black vote. Do you understand? Her opinion of the black voter is so low that she thinks, hey, let's toss them a holiday and they'll vote for my husband. Yeah, right. She thought she could sway the black American vote by tossing them a bone Juneteenth. And it was created to secure her husband's reelection. We'll get into its history as it is. Understand, as I said earlier, many state and municipal governments and major corporations and elements of the federal government, they're pulling away from DEI, and it only makes sense that Juneteenth, a DEI holiday, be equally defunded. Now, Martin Luther King Day, that was another such bone tossed to black America in the hopes of winning their votes. How often must a president throw minorities a special holiday thinking it's going to get him votes? Historically, it doesn't. You understand? Black America is not stupid. You toss them a DEI bone in the form of a national holiday, okay? That doesn't carry any gravitas with black Americans. Give them credit for being at least a little savvy. It had no verifiable effect on the black vote. There's no traceable effect at all. In fact, more voters voted for Donald Trump than for the guy who threw this bone. Or I should say the guy whose wife tossed it. That pretty well dumps Jill Biden's plans in the toilet. You know, Jill, she was the real power behind the throne. Everybody knows that now. Auto pen? We'll see. She was desperate for her senile husband to win re-election. You understand, she was not willing to surrender what she viewed as her second term of office. So she threw black voters a bone, and they named it Juneteenth. My God, what a name! Juneteenth! Yeah, baby, June, come on. The very name, Juneteenth, that bespeaks of illiteracy and intellectual inferiority. The name Juneteenth is a slap in the face to black Americans. It says, you don't know better? Let me throw it at you. Inside white joke at black's expense. Thank you, Dr. Jill Biden. You understand that even when slavery was officially abolished, northern farmers, factory owners, and the like, they held black slaves for another 35 years before the government forced them to let go. You understand? When these guys supposedly rode in on their horses and told the black slaves, you're free, it's over, it didn't mean diddly for thousands of slaves in the North who for at least 35 more years were working as slaves before the feds finally caught up and said, all right, they can go too. Now this 35-year hiatus, okay, that was no surprise, since the North's emancipation of slaves was never really about freeing slaves. It was intended to cripple the economy of the South, cripple their enemy. The South's economy was almost entirely based on agriculture, crops. They relied on thousands of field workers for even one big plantation to produce crops. Those workers were largely black slaves. Now, the very definition of slave, let's look at the word slave, because it's subject to interpretation. It can apply to a sharecropper, a mine worker, a railroad worker, so many things. It can involve working people under conditions where their entire paycheck, for what it's worth, goes back to the company to pay for their room, their board, their clothing, and very little else. Hence what they call the company store. Now that's slavery. That is slavery. Every bit as much as blacks out there toiling in the field, being clothed in rags, being fed a basic staple, and worked every day. Same thing. You're Irish, you're Chinese, you're black railroad workers. They were slaves long after the Civil War was over, people. Slave took on a new definition. These workers were often imprisoned, beaten, cheated, and prevented from escaping every bit as much as their black predecessors. Federal and state governments, they turned a blind eye as these slaves built our railroads, mined our gold and silver, cleared the land for development. So when you bring up June 19th, just remember, it wouldn't even be were it not for Jill Biden's desperate move to secure votes for her ailing husband and her equally ailing political party. Ah, yes, lost in the murky depths of the minds of black America is just what effect Juneteenth has had on their vote. For months in advance, a counterfeit story, a fake backstory, was created and disseminated so that when they introduced Juneteenth, they could validate it with fake history. So, if it's true, which it's not, but if it were justifiable, why wouldn't we celebrate freeing the Irish, the Italian, the Polish, the Jewish workers from the slavery of non-union factories and sweatshops? Why isn't there a day to commemorate the labor laws, the ones that eventually emancipated these people? If we're going to toss anybody a bone, at least let it be a real one and not some half-baked lie following a specific agenda. Juneteenth, it's fake. Juneteenth, it sucks. Juneteenth, that's about the size of it.